from the worldwidewoodturners.com. This is Volume 1, Episode 2, coming out in October 2019. Yeah, we've been busy. It's a little bit more work than I thought it was getting into it, but I'll tell you what, it's a growing experience and it's well worth it. It is. This is your worldwide woodturning club. Now, my daddy always told me, if you got to keep beating the drum, they don't hear it. I'm not going to keep beating this drum. I'm going to let you know straight up. This is your woodturning group. Yours. It's not mine. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. But I need some involvement. I'd like to hear back from you. And I've heard a little bit back from you. A little bit. I mean, I'm tiny, itsy bitsy. But I'd like to get more from you. More feedback, more input. Oh yeah, if you're going to be part of the advisory team, seats are open right now. Just tell me you want to be part of the advisory team. Because what happens is, in a nutshell, you have a question. You send a question to me by email using this address, and only this address. You got it? Okay. Now, once I have your question, then I'll send it to my advisory team and get recommendations. Then I get them all back, and then we sit and take a look at it, we being the advisory team, and we take a look at it, and we decide which ones we're going to share. Most of them we do share because this is sort of like riding a bicycle. There's not only one way to do it. Right? So we're going to show you all the different ways to do things and share with you all the information. Then you try them and you decide them, but I'm always going to have a comment. You know, that's going to happen. But remember, it's your wood turning club. I'm going to quit beating that drum because we've got to talk now about what we did this month. And this was interesting, or is interesting, or maybe interesting. I don't know. It's, watch. Hey, you know how I tell you that we do a lot of weird things here? Well, not a lot of weird things, just some weird things. But we're going to take worldwidewoodturners.com on the road. And the thing is, we could be in your shop, his shop, their shop, or even my shop. We're going to learn wood turning all together. And that's why I found the perfect situation. I found a guy in the country next to the sugarcane fields. Yeah, all that really does happen in South Louisiana. Right there, his shop is the home his wife was born in. He lives in a new house behind it. But this one is his workshop. It's a full-size house. Yeah, old raised house. It's quite unique. And a lot of history in it. I'd like to share that history with you. We will over the years. And I did say years because, hey, we're going. But I went there on a Thursday. Now, this fella invites his friends over every Thursday. And this Thursday, we hit it right. I went with my buddy Ronnie. We went up to take a look at it and see what was going on and watch him do segments. He had 9 guys in the shop at one time. 9 different guys. 9 different opinions. 9 different attitudes. All focused on one project. Just one project. Yeah, they develop a project. I got to tell you more about this. But first, let's get started where the starting gets started at. That's at the start. We went to this workshop with the intention of showing you and other woodturners how it is if you all get together and share ideas. Yes, now Skipper and his pals get together in Skipper's shop. They meet elsewhere, but they get in Skipper's shop and design a project. Now you can see this. This is their graph paper design. I say graph paper because the easy way to do it is with graph paper. You design out the piece you want. Here they're doing a segmented bowl. So they're laying out the layers of all the segments, one on top of each other. And this is an upside down look at it now. But when you put all these together and then you cut it away, you get art. What do you get? I mean, you can turn this thing around, flip it over, do all kinds of special cuts before you put the pieces in. Look, this is one of the pieces he showed at an exhibition a couple of weeks ago at a wood turning club. That is gorgeous. Gorgeous. But he's got a rack full of them. He loves to do this. All right, they design it. They lay it out. Then they cut it out. and he used a sled made in his shop. The sled, well, I'll tell you more about that. I mentioned the sled because this is the first segmented piece I made. This is dated 10 of 97, which means if you find a wood magazine, W-O-O-D magazine, in the early part of 1997, you will find this bowl and how to do it, and the pattern, and how to do the rings, and the segments, and hey, I got a mistake. Whoa. Yeah. But I got to tell you I got a mistake because it looks really, really good. But lay this out. The sled, this is the 16 pieces. This sled that fits on top of the table saw cuts the sections. Now, he's got them for 10 sections, 12 sections, 14 sections, 16 sections. It's written on it. Now, you don't flip the board over. You make the cut, and then you move it to the other fence. You see it? Now, one fence to the other fence means that all the angles, come on back to the board. Come on. See this? All these angles have to fit right. They have to be in just the right angle. I want to tell you that there's a lot of books and stories out there about how this works, and they'll tell you to put a clamp on it, pull it in, and you close up those holes. No, you won't. You might think you do, but I have a piece inside that just moved, and it's fractured because I put too much pressure on it to glue it. It looked pretty good, and now, 20 years later, the wood moved. Wow, wood moves. But the sled would get me there. That's the beauty of this. The sled with two fences. This is the first cut, boom, second cut. All the length is determined by a gauge that you have on the saw. It's a simple device. This is not radically different or hard to make or hard to work with. This is how you're going to get the little bitty pieces to make the big piece. Now, once you have the pieces sliced up, you put them in a separate baggie or a grocery bag. I don't talk to me about the plastics in the shop. That's not where we're going. You put them in a selection because each ring is going to be different. And each ring comes out of a different strip of wood. Did you see we were cutting all the pieces off of one piece of wood? Well, that wood was long enough to get everything for that one strip, for that one segment, for that one layer came out of that one piece of wood. So, is that wood going to match the next wood? Really? Is it going to match? Well, let's not take the chance. We're going to make all these rings of this one layer, and we're going to put them all together. Now I need some accent, okay? Because wood sometimes can be boring, right? So I'm going to put some segments in between them. Now look at this. These segments are going in, but they're not going in like you and I would think they would go in. Let's switch over to somebody that's done this for a while. These sections are stood up on the edge grain. They're standing on edge grain, so they're presenting side grain when you slice it away. Look, if you put two pieces together and you put an end grain in, and then you slice it, this end grain is going to give you a different consistency, a different color, a different texture than the rest of it is. So what do we do? We stand the edge up. We put it straight to the sky, and the wood goes out this way. And that way, when I slice it, I'm slicing side grain. Not end grain, side grain. So when I sand, when I do my scraper, we got to talk about that. When I do that, it's going to be all the same consistency of wood all the way around. There won't be highs and lows in consistency, grain, and finishes or anything else. It is a brain dead idea on how to eliminate wood edge grain, and it worked. It really did. Okay, now we have the pieces glued up. We're putting them in rings, and we're putting them together with Tight Bind 3 glue. Use Tight Bind 3 because, hey, our humidity down here runs in the 80s and 90s most days. So we want to use something that's suitable to our area. If you get away with white glue, or you can get away with mixed glue, or you can get away with anything else. It's okay. I'm telling you what we use. All right? Now, we've put the rings together. See this? All the rings together. We've got those wafers in there. And then we're going to put a clamp on it. We're using these, I call them duck clamps. They're not really duck clamps. They're like a hose clamp for a big, big hose. And you put a couple, you can get a couple of them. But hey, if you go buy them at Home Depot or Lowe's, you got to get the same manufacturer for them thread into each other. I used to buy only the 6-inch versions, and then I just screw them all together to make the length I needed for the bands, or take them apart, or whatever. I think he's got a few hanging around the shop. I'm not sure. He's got a few clamps in here. You know, we collect things. All right, now we have them put like that, and we glued them all together. Now what do? Well, we get together at the sanding machine. Now this, I don't want to call it the wrong title. I have a 1020 version of this sander. That is, you can put 10 inches through it and turn it around and do the other side and do a 20. But this one is a 1632. A little bit larger, a little more motor, and actually a little more stable than the one I'm using. I got an early one 20 years ago. But we run them through the sander and knock off those ridges, and also flatten that surface. See, we're gluing these together, and we want them to be flat. Now all this malarkey, and I got to use that term, malarkey, about you put it on and then you flatten it out. Well, how did you flatten it out before you put it on? Do you have me? All right. They got to be flat. Now I could do something without this sander. I could take a piece of a big sheet of 80 grit paper or 100 grit paper and glue it to my table saw top with spray glue, and then lap it back and forth to knock those ridges down and get it flat enough for adhesion. Or we can go through the sander, run it through the sander, get rid of those ridges that came up. You know, you cut an end grain, it's going to go away right away. And we're using an 80 grit, maybe a little bit rougher, to knock that down. But then we're going to change belts and run it through one more final time at maybe a 100 grit. Why? We don't want a lot of cracks in between. We don't want to be filling cracks with glue. We want the wood to bond to the glue, to bond to the wood. Okay? I don't need that layer of wood. I'm not a great fan of the monkey glue because it expands. So we're using a Type Bond 3, it doesn't expand. We don't leave a lot of water marks, and we don't have oil marks and all. It works out really great. So now, we've got it ringed up. We've got it flattened out. We're going to lay it out. I got a guy here doing this. He is locating the dead center of these pieces, because we're going to cross these targets all the way up when we're putting it together. It's critical that we find the centers. It takes a few minutes. You stand on the straight edge in a square and you do these lines. Then when you put them together, you can move the lines to, look, take a look. I can have a pencil mark here and a fin, and I can line them up. And that's going to give me a good straight line through the piece. What do I need a straight line? I got a piece right here I did a couple of years ago. This is why I do a straight line. You see that? That's not straight. And they have some twist in them. And I can sit here and look at it and see the twist. And it's a simple little bowl. And I glued it together, and I got a piece of laminate in between them to accent the layers. But if you do the lines, the square, you can kick it a quarter of a segment, half a segment, 3/4 of a segment, 2/3 of a segment, 7/16 of a segment. What I'm talking about is you can control how the spire goes. And it does spire. In your mind, it does spire. And then let's throw another cake in the works here. Suppose we use a couple of different colors of shim stock. I'm going to call it shim stock. It's the separation segments that go between them. Suppose we mix this up a little bit and we have a dark one and a light one and a red one. And a dark one, a light one, and a red one. I got 12, so I can do 3 times 4. Okay. Or in 16, I can do 4 different colors. You see, we can keep playing with what you see here by playing with what you see here. And that's where the layout comes at. Okay? Now we've laid it out, we put it together, we marked it. Let's put it on the lathe and do some other work with it. Before we jump over to the lathe, I got to show you one of my favorite pieces, because I really liked saving big wood for big projects. So I have other wood. I had this in the shop. Now, some of you might recognize this. You can get it at the lumber store. You see it? It's, I want to say particle board, but it's Paralam. This was the ends and drops off of a beam on a construction site that I was building years and years ago. And it is that material that's all chopped up and then glued up, and then 1/2 inch layers that you put on the side of the house or subroofing and all that stuff. It was popular for years and years, and it's still out there in the Home Depot stores. But I said, how would that turn out? So I went ahead and did exactly the same thing. I did this 20 years ago that Skipper and the crew were doing. I flattened the disc. I cut the disc out, and then I flattened them, and then I glued them with a band of glue around the outside edges. I didn't glue the whole piece. I put a band of 1 inch around this piece, then 1 inch around that piece, 1 inch around that piece. Then I put them all together. And at that time I was using a press, and I'd press them and let them cure. I only did about 10, 15 pounds of pressure, that's all. And then I turned it. The problem with this is the beauty of this. All that wood has got all that resin. So if you're cutting that wood, you're cutting that resin. So if you're not a good at sharpening something, don't fool with this. If you're good at sharpening something, you like your carbides and all, go ahead and fool with it. But it makes for an interesting piece. And then you take it to your buddies and bet on what kind of wood it is. It's pine, but hey, they won't know. But make that bet on the side, okay? Now, we're going to go over to the lathe. We've put a piece in a headstock, and we're using a traditional chuck. Now, this piece didn't get rounded that we're putting in to the headstock. It didn't get a dovetail put on it. It was just put in rough. And it stands proud of the jaws. Then we can flatten it a little bit with the speed of it was already flat, but I'm going to re-true it to the speed of the lathe and scrape that across and clean it up so I got a really good flat bonding surface. Here it is. If you have this versus this, can you get that? And when you're gluing it up, you're going to get a better bond. So let's make the first piece and true it to the lathe. You see, we don't know if that chuck is fitting in that lathe without having a little bit of kick on it. Now that wouldn't happen, right? They're all machines extraordinarily fine and all this. No, it happens. That chuck might not run as true as you think it would run. But when you put the block in it and you true up the face of the block, you have made the block run as true as you want it. So, we got the block in. We're going to glue up the next piece and bring it in. We're going to hold the piece in a set of jaws. Now these are, I don't want to use the brand name. These are like, well, yeah, I gotta say it. They're jumbo jaws. They got the little rubber stops on them. And this is what he only uses for that gluing. It's easy for him to move. They've changed the buttons and all, so he only uses 4 buttons to line it up. Why? You're only holding it to line it up. You're not holding it to turn it. You're only holding it to line it up. And then you put the pressure on the tailstock, and it would flatten out against each other. And when they're flat against each other, you get a smaller glue joint, a more precise glue joint. You can line up those little, remember I was talking about those marks? You can line up the little marks and get exactly the centers that you're looking for, or the twist you're looking for. And then you let that cure. Curing is a thing a lot of us don't think about. This is a plate I did years ago, and this is year 2000. And it was some strips of stuff around the shop, and I sawed the strips, and then I glued them together, and I had a strip and a piece, strip and a piece, strip and a piece. And then I took them over to the chop saw, or really I used the sled, and I cut them into three wedges after I put them together. Then I put this together all with glue. Now, here's the deal, and if you don't know it, get into it. That glue doesn't dry, that glue cures. Oh, I'm going to be eccentric about this. That glue doesn't dry, it cures. So what you touch and say that it's dry, that may have not have done the complete chemical change that's required to get a good bond. So these guys timed it out and found out that they can put these pieces on, let them cook. I say cook. Let them sit there, no lights on them, no external heat, just the natures of God, the forces of God, and let them there for 15 minutes. Then they take the faceplate off, put the new one, the next ring into the faceplate, or the jumbo jaws, and then they pull it back up again, line it up again, put the glue on it, make sure it fits up nice, it lays in flat, put a little bit of pressure on it. Remember, we only need 15 pounds. That's a good twist. If you squeeze the wine out of the glue and it leaves all the joint out, you didn't accomplish anything because you got nothing in the joint. So, but then again, if you don't press it tight enough to hold it together, you don't have a joint. So what we're doing is we're going to take the time and the product. Now the glue is fresh. Came right out of a 1 gallon bottle, which was only a couple days from the store. Be wary where you buy your glue. It's not how old the glue is, how long did they have it before they got it to you. That's why I normally buy my glue from the manufacturer or the distributor that handles the bulk of it because it's fresher products. You might find that with CA glue, polyurethane glue, Tight Bond, all those products. Be careful where you buy it from. Sometimes the deal is not a deal. I went to my gallery and got some pieces out that I've done in the past. This is dated 2000. This is a checkerboard. Now, I'm holding it right now, and I can tell you I can feel a movement in this piece over here in the corner. So today I'm going to get out my epoxy and fill that corner to fix that piece back up because it moved. Something happened. But this was a checkerboard I glued up, and it's pretty symmetrical. And then I put some banding on it. And then the hardest thing was I had to spin it on an exact center. Why? Because I had this idea that I want these 4 points, all 4 of these points, to touch the outside edge. That can't happen if it shifts over one way or the other. Wait a minute. What if it is offset a little bit? What if it is not concentric? What if those squares were different sizes? What if there weren't 2 colors or 4 colors? What if there was, what if, that's the what if thing. You see, we've done all this work to get to a piece that's glued up sitting on a lathe. Now they're going to let it cook or cure for about 3 or 4 days. They're going to come back in. Somebody will be here on Monday morning. It's a Thursday we're doing this. Somebody will be here Monday morning and they will rough turn this thing down. Rough turn and bring it in. On that tail, on that on that chuck, where it's at, and bring it all the way down and take off all the excess wood. Now, then they'll take it to their shop and put it between centers and support it. Now, I got to say between centers because if you take a piece like this and you want to go take the center out and it's too irregular, you're going to get some catches. So we're going to put a faceplate on this thing, take the outside off. That's going to spin it balanced a little bit more, and then slowly work on the inside and step down, 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 down. A little bit down, 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 until we get to the wall thickness we want. If you're really into thin work, you'll understand wood moves. And wood moves not always in a way we want it to move. So this is about a 1/4 inch thick. That's pretty thin for Paralam. But hey, they made a whole bunch of buildings. They're pretty durable. It's pretty durable stuff, and I really like the texture of it. But they're going to put it between the lathe, between points. They're going to rough it in, and then go back in and fine cut it. Now, somebody had another piece to come into the shop. I want you to take a look at this one. A young man brought this one in. I say young man because all the rest of us are old guys. So he was fairly young when he brought this piece in. It was a piece of cedar that he turned, and he wasn't getting a good finish on the outside of it. Couple of things. First thing he walked up with is a gouge that he was using, and he said, I'm using this. My word to him was, don't tell him it's sharp, because it ain't sharp. They'll fix that for you. And they did. They went up to the grinder on a CBN, that stands for Can't Be Nice, or wheel, and they redressed that edge using a jig. Now, there's no magic to this. The jig gets set to 2 inches off the tip of the tool. The distance out from the face of the wheel to the bottom of the socket is 7 inches. From the center of the wheel to the bottom of the socket is 4 inches. That's on the David Ellsworth pattern that's been out for 20 years or more. All right? But they redressed that gouge, and then he chucked that bowl back up, went over there and did some cuts. His first couple of cuts were not pretty. Then he was taught how to tip the tool down and do a shear scraping. Come across it in a shear scraping, which takes little bitty fine cuts. You understand this, as wood turners, we watch YouTube, just like you are now. And we see this guy turning, and there's a big pile of stuff running over his shoulder and tearing out and all this. And we think, wow, I want to be able to do that. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's like you're going to wear a tight bathing suit at the gym. If you can wear one, wear it. But if you can't, you can't. You can't. So why do you want to think about all those shavings going over your shoulder? It doesn't matter what flies over the shoulder. It matters what you do to your piece. So they showed him how to cock that tool up and apply it to the face of that bowl on a slight angle, and that's called shear scraping. And it scraped off that outer coat. It was even better than a sanding that he had, and he hadn't sanded it yet. And it was shear scraped all the way around. Then somebody pulled out a card scraper. Do you know what a card scraper is? I started my cabinet work in 1962 in a mill shop where they built pews and benches for churches. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the place. And it's been gone for 50 years. But when they finished out a pew, the guy would take a card scraper and scrape. After all the sanding was done, because everybody did all this for sanding, there was no machines, he card scraped it out and ended up with a perfect finish. Now get this, it was a seat, a chair, a bench, a pew, and it had a perfect finish on it. Perfect. With a card scraper. Card scrapers. They are a piece of metal, straight up piece of metal, with a burr rolled over on it. Well, I'll watch the guy put it in a vise and roll the burr over this, I want to say it's some type of figured thing. They got a nickname, a name it when you use it for drawing. It's a template. But he rolled that edge on it, and then he took that scraper over to the lathe and scraped with it. When they first said card scraper, I'm thinking he's going to get out a 4x6 card scraper, and there's a handful of them out there available in the marketplace. If you have to look for card scraper, and you might not find it in the wood turning catalogs, you will find it in Amazon and some of the other places. But it is a straight edge, and you need a burnisher, and you burnish that edge. That edge doesn't stay there a long time. Like other scrapers, the burr on the edge is what does the cutting. It's not that sharp corner, it's the burr that comes up over it. That's what does the cutting. Well, they took that scraper over to the machine and they planed it across, and they moved the tailstock out the way, the tool rest out the way, and they could just plane it across. Light cuts. Well, what was coming off was as fine or finer than sawdust, and was being sliced away. I get a little excited about that, really. Sliced away. It wasn't abraded. It wasn't torn. It wasn't gouged or plowed or cut, chopped. It was sliced away, like you'd slice a fine steak. Just take this right off the top of it. That's what gave that piece some accent. Now, we're getting into segment turning. You say, well, I can't find any pieces to turn with. I thought that at one time, I was cleaning up after a cabinet maker was putting some stuff in one of my projects. And he had all these drops of 3/4 inch cabinet grade plywood. And it's got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 layers. Always an odd number because the top and the bottom have to match. Alright, 13 layers of veneer. It's cabinet grade, so there's not a lot of voids. If you don't get cabinet grade, you're going to have some holidays in there you can hollow it through. Alright, but I picked these pieces up off the floor. Yeah, that's right, he was throwing them away. Brought them home, and they were roughly 5 or 6 inches and some lengths. And I chopped them all up. Then I flattened them out and I glued them together, and that's what I come up with right there. That's a plywood bowl. You see, plywood. So if you want to get into segments, you don't have to use expensive wood, exotic wood, weird wood, special wood, or anything else. Pretty much anything you choose that can go together. Let's talk about that. I just said anything you use that can go together. So I go out and find 2 2x4s out here in the yard. One's been laying there about 6 months, and the other I just bought at Home Depot 5 minutes ago. And I'm going to use these pieces to make a segmented bowl. What's wrong with it? Not that it's a 2x4. It's pine. It's all right. Okay. What's wrong with it is the age difference in the condition of the wood. I'm going to take something that's relatively green and put it to something that's relatively seasoned or cured, and I'm going to put them together, and I might get this. Yep, that's what I'm going to get. One's going to swell and the other one's not, or one's going to shrink and the other one's not. You don't know what's going to happen. It's wood. Only God determines that. So you have to work with the product. So if you're going to put 2 pieces that go together, 2 types of wood that go together, pick something of the same family, sort of. I would do a hardwood and a hardwood. I wouldn't do a hardwood and a softwood. Softwood and hardwood, the differences, needles and leaves, you know. But I wouldn't try to put 2 really exotic woods together, because I think it's going to move on you. And like I said, if that sled is set, then you have the right joints. With the right joints, you can put it together. I got to think about this for a minute. Hey, this last summer I went to 2019 SWAT in Waco, Texas. Now, this is an awesome symposium. It's like a family event with family you really do like. Everybody gets together for one reason: wood turning. And it's not overly commercial. Oh, there's a great sales floor, probably one of the best sales floors in the world. But all the demonstrations aren't tuned to sales. A fellow did a demonstration. He's Andy Chen out of Texas. Andy did a demonstration on putting segments together. Now, I'm at this meeting at the SWAT with guys from all over the world, and they all do segmented work. And they all think they know the magic. But in 15 minutes, we all learned Andy changed the magic. Yeah. You have to have, if you have 6 segments, that's 6 60s come together, that makes a 360, right? Yeah, they taught me that in 7th grade. All right, now, to get that 6 60s, they all have to be 60. You with me yet? Okay. Here's a picture of a piece that's the bottom of a bowl that got put together at a workshop. And it almost closes perfectly, but for me, this is a wood project. This is perfect. This is absolutely gorgeous. There are no cracks, no lines, no gaps. See, they put that thing together, and it could go together, and because the angles are right. That's where the sled comes in. The angle is right. Not the angle from the blade. The angle from, I'm going to mess with you here. From this fence to this fence is going to be right. Do you see? This fence and this fence have to have the right angle. This combination is the right angle. It's got nothing to do with where the blade is. I didn't believe that until Andy picks up a piece and shows us, and it looks cattywampus. I mean, really. He cut a piece 5 degrees out of line for the angles, but he cut both pieces 5 degrees out of line. He moved the entire fence, slid it up, and moved it to where it wasn't going to be uniform all the time, but the same angles. What Andy was doing was cutting out segments for this piece, and he was using a sled, and the sled had those 2 arms I was telling you about that run like this, all right? Then Andy purposely shifted both arms the same amount, so the angle was the same angle, but it wasn't in line with the blade the same. Did you get that? I just took that pie and sliced it up a little bit, move it there. You see, when you do a perfect center, and some guys give up on it, they put a solid one in. I have a solid one in almost all these pieces because I didn't know how to get that center to line up. So to get it lined up, it was all in the cutting. So Andy showed us how, if you have that angle between those 2 fences, and it's the bottom of this fence and the top of this fence, to be exactly the same angle, and the corner line, you can move this thing up or down, in or out, up or down, and you can change the way it impacts the center of the piece. So instead of your 3 pieces coming to a point, if you went all the way through, they would come to a different point. Right, it would be a little cattywampus. That's a good term, okay? But he did this only to show us that you can cut the pieces to a different angle, to a set angle at a different perspective to the blade, and still get a ring you can put together without an open joint. And then to prove the point, I love this, to prove the point, he glued it together with a rubber band and some CA glue. Put a rubber band over this coring in, drizzled CA glue over it, and 5 minutes later it was hard as a rock and fit as can be, and you couldn't find the joints. You see, it's in the cutting. The cutting comes from the layout. So if we start from the top, right on down, you're going to get better. I have to apologize for the sound quality we have today. They are reworking the airport nearby, and I think they'll finally open up the new terminal, maybe 2-3 years late. But they changed the direction of planes, and they had it coming out that way, which is me over our head all day long, and then this afternoon over our head all night long. But that's going to interfere with the sound, and we apologize for that. We just did a little thing about segments. We didn't really turn a piece yet. We've gotten some turning done. We're prepared. But that's what happens when you plan out a project. Get out your graph paper. You can buy graph paper at Walgreens, Winn-Dixie, Kroger's. They all have graph paper. Get the 1/4x1/4 graph paper. Draw your piece in profile, right here, in profile, and then insert your layers to the thicknesses you think you work with. A little bit, off a little bit, all right? And if you're going to add a veneer, put a heavier line to allow for the veneer. And then you have the idea of what the pieces will be in width, what they'll be cutting, what they'll lay out to be. You can get out your template and lay it on a template and determine it. You can get out, there's programs in the iPhone to get those dimensions. One of the guys in this group draws them on a CAD program and then blows it apart to get all the exact dimensions. Say when they walk in the room, their bowl is planned out all the way through. And they all had part of this. How do you want to change this? How do you want to change that? Where the accent rings will be, where the accent rings won't be. And I've had guys just get totally amazed by what goes into the bowl to make the bowl. I hope it helped you out today. And if I can do any more for you, you got to let me know. Remember, I ain't going to beat that drum forever. You got to talk to me. I'm Captain Eddie Castellan. You're on WorldwideWoodTurners.com. Hey, for a good turning tip, I'm going to give you one on how to use something way out of the ordinary to sharpen up your tools. I say way out of the ordinary because most folks think you're going to sharpen your tools, you need to go to a grinder. I'm not going to a grinder. I'm going to my 3x21 belt sander made by Ryobi, doesn't have to be that brand, and I'm using the 220 grit wheel made by 3M, and it's just the finest I could get at the hardware store that I went to. Now I'm going to use this pad to shape my skew. You see, sharpening the skew is a whole nother thing, but I'm going to shape it. I want about 25 to 30 degrees on this, and that's a total. And to get that, what jig do I use? Well, I don't. I have a little thing here that tells me that that's just about 30 degrees. You see it? That's how exact this is. If it's 40 degrees, you can work with it. If it's less than 25 degrees, it's going to be a little bit fine. But let's go for 30 degrees, okay? I'll crank this up and show you. Here's a cutaway, okay? Okay, quick review. That's a 3x21 Ryobi belt sander. It's variable speed, but I got it at about a medium setting right now. And I'm just going on with a 220 grit pad that I could get from my local hardware store. Now I stroked it on one side. I knew that had a feel for it with us. But if I don't have a good feeling for it, I put a black mark slot on it. So then I go back down to it again, and I can see if I remove the mark slot, then I've sanded in the right place. Now sanding and sharpening is two different things. What I've just did is shape the skew. That's about how easy it is. Because I put the mark slot on there to help me when I was sanding, I could see if I moved the steel on that spot. So you can use your mark slot and do it. But here's the other tip. If you leave the black marker on there, it'll go in your wood. You don't want that. So clean it off with some alcohol or some toxic soda or something, whatever. Oh, once you get it to that point, you have to sharpen it. Remember, we just shaped it. It's at 30 degrees. I'm going to get up my diamond stone. I'm going to put this thing right down in front of me. I'm going to pass that diamond stone. You can't see. I'll pass that diamond stone right down that edge. And if I look over here, I'm taking off the black mark slot right where I want it at. So I kind of get a feel of where I want to be stroking this. You might be old enough to remember when a barber used a straight razor. He didn't sharpen it, or grind it. He lapped it and sharpened it every time. Makes a difference. And sharp tools do make a difference. On worldwidewoodturners.com. I think I got this one right where I wanted that. Shop tip for you. I want to cut this 1-inch dowel and get some pieces out of it, about 3 inches long. So I made up this little jig. It's just a 1x4 and a 1x4, and I got them glued together and a couple staples on the bottom of them, and that's to make a nice T shape. Well, sort of a T, isn't it? All right. Well, I want to have a little bit more on the backside than the 90, so it doesn't warp back on me. Then I can just put my block on, crank up my belt sander, make a pass. Now when I did that,
if this was a really round piece, and it is, and I touched that blade, that 6-point blade may grab it and spin it in my fingers. That's how I lost the fingerprints on a couple of them. So that's a tip. Little block, little jig, little time, little safety.
In order to make our self-imposed deadline of producing a program every 4 weeks, that's right, that means 13 times a year, we have to get some programs done and edited. I lost a lot of time this week putting together the piece from the other shop because I wasn't really sure how to format it and make it work. And whatever they did, I had to explain. So I was tied up on that. Then I wanted to go in the shop and turn some Christmas lights. That didn't happen because of schedule, world, other stuff. And when it came down to crunch time, nature didn't go along with us. But that's where worldwidewoodturners.com is. We're trying to build this club for you and would still like to have your input. I'm going to beat the drum again. I want to hear back from what you want, what you don't want, what you need, what you don't need, what you can't stand, what you really, really want. I want to hear from you. All you got to do is drop me a note to our email line. But let's go a little bit beyond what we're doing there. When I was out here yesterday, cleaning up some stuff and drying off some things, no air, no vacuum, no lights, it was a little bit slow. I was realizing that I get a lot of calls, and I got them yesterday from folks who got questions about cutting and slicing. And I love the one that says, how often do you sharpen? Really do. It's a good question. But here's the question to you. How often do you sharpen? Is it often enough? Did you need it? Do you need to do it now? You see, if I can answer all those questions, so can you. So instead of saying, is it time to sharpen? It is time to sharpen. But how? We're working on putting together, I've got a table outside my shop here, perfect lighting, and there's room for 4 grinders, or 4 sharpening devices. I'm going to go from a carbon wheel sharpener to a CBN, that stands can't be nicer, to a Tormek, to a belt sander, to a stone. Wow, I got to get all this stuff together. I've got it all. Why? Kind of a tool hoard. If I could get it, I got it. If I got it, I loved it and I used it. So we're going to set one up and show you how it is to go from what to what to what to what to what, and how to get a finish, and what is that finish going to do for your tools. You see, it's not how sharp the tool is sometimes. It's how you use the sharp tool that'll make the difference. I can get a gouge so sharp you can shave with it. You don't want to, but you can. But then I can get a gouge sharper than that. But how long will it last? And what will it do? And why do we want it to do it? So that's coming up here at worldwidewoodturners.com. But I got a couple other things. We like to get involved in some other projects. Let me talk to you about them. I hope you pardon the cuts and the edits and jumps today, but our airport was closed yesterday because they didn't have lights either. So today, a whole lot of people are trying to get out of town. I don't know why, but they're trying to get out of town. There's a Saints game in town, and it's a busy kind of day. So we have to work with the sounds around us. And a minute ago was doing really well, and then the Saints probably did something great on the field, and the house behind us really had a blast. So that's what we're doing, cutting in and out. But I want to tell you about projects. I've got 2 projects I'm involved in. One is called Beads of Courage. Now, I have belonged to a wood turning club for a long time. And in the last year, monitoring very closely, the Beads of Courage program is supposed to be supported by SWAT. And this club is a member of SWAT. Never got mentioned. There was never guidelines, rules, explanations. Might have been talked about in cliques and groups and pals, but never to the whole organization to say, this is something we can do. This is something you can do. Beads of Courage doesn't require a club. It requires a wood turner. Now, I'm going to post a link on how to get the Beads of Courage. And you go to this link, and wait, it ain't down here, it's going to be up there, over there. All right. And they're going to explain to you what your thing has to be. Today, my wife and I are going shopping. Yeah, I'm going to have to do that, yes. And I want to see if I can find something to give me an idea how much volume you need to have. So if I say it's going to be 4 by 4 by 5, how much room is that? Well, if I get a 2-pound bag of rice, that might fit it. But I'm going to find that out. Don't go with it yet until I get it worked out. But all those rules are on the Beads of Courage site. And when you turn something, it'll also have a place for you to send the Beads of Courage jars or containers. This is a special little project. I'm fortunate and I don't have to do one for a loved one. But I'm also fortunate that I can do one for one of your loved ones. Make it a container. When these children receive treatment, they get a bead. That's their bead of courage. They get to store their bead of courage in this box. It's a very big thing for children who really don't understand what we're doing and why we're doing it to them. So will you help me support Beads of Courage? I know you will. And I got another one to tell you about. We've been doing this for 10, 12 years. Well, let me see, 16 years. It's called Freedom Pens. Now, Freedom Pens is a national organization and all. And they work with you to get some things done. I got a little disenchanted with it after we lost Sergeant Joe Kelly. It wasn't the same kind of group and the same moxie, and same power, and same everything. So we decided that we were going to turn Freedom Pens just between us. Yeah, so I talked to Doug Rowe, and I got to explain this. Doug Rowe is active Army. Maybe it's Army Reserve, but it's active Army. He's U.S. Army. His son, the boy Rowe, is now active Marine Corps. Yeah, that's right. I had it wrong a couple of weeks ago. I apologize, Doug, but hey, things happen, and I don't have, pardon me, a brain. But Doug is my guy. Doug is active military, and when I get Freedom Pens, I just sent him a box of 283. I send Freedom Pens to Doug, and Doug distributes them to our troops, where they are, where they're working, what they're doing on their voluntary effort to preserve our freedom. Their voluntary effort. They get hurt, they get killed, they get wounded, they get misaligned. Several things go right, a whole lot of things go wrong, but they're still there for us. So how about spinning a Freedom Pen? Okay? It would really make a difference. Want more details, you can go to my website and get the details on that. Another airplane coming. Wow, it's like there's nobody at the airport, they're all leaving. I get distracted sometimes and I can't remember what we started on or where we're going or what road I'm traveling, but I wanted to tell you that we didn't get the wood turning project in of turning Christmas ornaments. And I don't want to put it off too long because you need to get these done. I have at least 4 families I need to do a string each for these families. And it's a simple little project and it's production work, sort of. And if you're interested, we will do it. When? In 2 weeks. That's right. In 2 weeks, we have to do a recap of the show. That's what WorldwideWoodTurners.com is all about. It's your wood turning club following your directions. And you say, I don't really want once a month. I love clubs that can meet more than once a month. I love clubs that get involved, that share ideas and thoughts and dreams. And if they read an article or see a video or whatever, they share it amongst all the other guys because they all want to grow and get better. That's what you want, and that's what I want. So we will do the ornament in 2 weeks. And I'll also include some tips and tricks that you share with me. I get information every day from callers and emails and messages and Instagram and I get them all over the place about ideas that we have and you have. So the way we're going to share it is, it's every 2 weeks we get a program. Monthly program is going to be the major feature. The one in between is going to be a recap. So if there's something came up in this past show, the one that was right behind us, all you have to do is let me know at our email address, and I'll address it for you. Give you the answer. Send it off to the advisory team, and there are seats open on the advisory team right now. If you want to be part of that team, all you have to do is drop me a note and say, hey, I want to be on the advisory team. When you get questions in, you get the questions. Then we find out how much of a team member you are. You see, we're all supposed to be on the same team. Sharing ideas, sharing our thoughts, sharing our magazines, sharing our videos, our articles, our books, DVDs, whatever it is. We're supposed to be there sharing. Just sharing it for one another. Don't keep it and hoard it. It's not a secret. Somebody else has already done it. You just don't know about them. So if you've got something, I'm not going to keep it a secret. I'm going to share it with worldwidewoodturners.com. All you have to do is tell me. What's that? Huh? I won't tell them that. Okay. Oh, will I? Test me. I'm Captain Eddie Castlewood. Thanks for being part of our club. Or pardon me, your club.